Marcus Chen stood in the middle of the vast auction hall of Kepler 9 station, surveying the rows and rows of empty seats. The place could hold at least 500 beings, maybe more. At that moment, there was room for exactly two, Marcus and a bored-looking auctioneer who checked his wrist device every few seconds. "That's weird," Marcus muttered to himself. He'd traveled 3 days from his scrapyard on Titan's moon to get here. 3 days on an overcrowded transport ship, eating nothing but protein bars and drinking recycled water. He'd seen ads everywhere. Massive bankruptcy auction, decommissioned ships, government surplus. Don't miss out. The promotional materials showed crowds of eager buyers, exotic vessels, and promises of unforgettable deals. Instead, he found this, an empty room that smelled of cleaning products and disappointment. The Vrixian auctioneer, whose name tag read Zilnex, cleared his throat with a sound like gravel in a blender. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of his species' extreme boredom. "Shall we begin?" Zilnex asked. His translator gave him a tired, subdued tone. "Sure," Marcus said, still confused, "but where is everyone? The ad said this was going to be a hit." Zilnex's mouth twitched into what might have been a smile or a grimace. It was hard to tell with Vrixians, yes. Well, the main attraction scared them off. They're just old ships, right? Pretty much. Surplus cargo carriers, decommissioned mining vessels, a few old military scouts. Zilnex touched his screen and holograms of various ships came to life on the auction platform. Those would have attracted plenty of buyers. But then there's the other one. Marcus leaned forward in his seat. The other one? Zil hesitated. His clawed fingers hovered over the screen. Lot number 7, the Wandering Echo. A Caith cruiser. The name hit Marcus like a bucket of cold water. Caith. Everyone in the galaxy knew that name. Even the humans who had joined the Galactic community only 50 years ago. The Caith had been an ancient species. Ancient, wise, and powerful. They had built things that made modern technology look like a toy. And then 200 years ago they disappeared. They all vanished in a single day. "Wait," Marcus said slowly. "A Caith ship, a real one, those are worth millions. Why wouldn't anyone bid on them?" Zilnex made a guttural sound. "Because Caith ships are cursed, human, everyone knows that. The last dealer who bought one went crazy within a week. The one before him vanished completely. And the one before that, well, his ship was found adrift near the Helix Nebula, unmanned with only blood on the walls." Marcus felt a tingle. Just stories. Superstition, maybe. Zil didn't seem convinced, but when the auction house announced that the Caith ship would be included, all the other registered bidders canceled. Everyone, even the intrepid main scavengers who buy anything, kept their distance. "Then why are you still here?" "I'm bound by contract." Zil sounded miserable. "Company policy. The auction must go on even with a bitter prize. Believe me, human, I'd rather be anywhere else." Marcus leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. He'd come hoping to buy a good cargo truck for his salvage business, something reliable that could help him haul scrap metal and old equipment between colonies. He'd saved 20,000 credits for it, his entire life savings. But a Caith ship, even a cursed one, if he could get it working, if he could sell just one component, he'd be rich and set for life. He could retire, buy a real house on Earth, and never have to worry about money again. Of course, he could also go mad or mysteriously disappear. But life was full of risks. "Okay," Marcus said. "Let's do this. Show me the ships." Zilnex seemed relieved to finally get started. He quickly scanned the first 6 lots, a freighter with a broken engine, a mining vessel with expired safety certificates, and a military explorer at least 100 years old. Marcus offered the minimum of 500 credits for each one, knowing that without competition they would be his if he wanted them. But he was waiting for number 7. Finally, Zilnex displayed the image and Marcus gasped. The Wandering Echo was beautiful. Even as a hologram, even shown from a distance, it was so breathtaking it gave him a lump in his throat. It didn't look like a modern ship with its boxy, practical designs. It looked organic, like something that had grown rather than been built. The hull curved in smooth, flowing lines that reminded Marcus of seashells or bird wings. Strange patterns covered its surface, perhaps decorations, perhaps something more. "Lot number 7, Zilnex said quietly. The Wandering Echo, space cruiser Caith, 300 years old. Length 400 m, crew capacity unknown, cargo capacity unknown, current status unknown. The ship has been impounded for 17 years after being found adrift on the outer edge. Multiple attempts to board have failed. Why? The airlocks won't open. The ship appears to have power, but it doesn't respond to any standard protocols. Scanning equipment malfunctions near it. It's essentially a very expensive piece of space junk that no one can access." Zilnex paused. Starting bid, 5,000 credits. I hear 5,000, Marcus asked immediately. Zilks waited, observing the empty room as usual. Twice, he sighed. Sold to a human for 5,000 credits. Just like that, Marcus owned a Caith cruiser. The transaction took another hour. Marcus transferred his credits, signed dozens of documents in languages he didn't understand, and received a data chip with the ship's location and basic ownership codes. Zilnek seemed increasingly nervous, as if Marcus might disappear or go berserk right there in the auction room. "Good luck, human," Zilnek said when it was all over. His tone suggested he thought Marcus would need it. "And maybe don't tell anyone you bought it for me." Marcus took a transport shuttle to where the wandering Echo was docked in a forgotten corner of the station's departure yards. The area was dark and cold, with only emergency lights flickering on the walls. His footsteps echoed on the metal floor. There were no other ships nearby. It was as if the station had quarantined this section. And there he was. The hologram hadn't done him justice. Up close, the wandering Echo was magnificent. His helmet seemed to glow with faint colors that shifted whenever Marcus moved his head. Blues, greens, and purples flowed like oil on water. The strange patterns he'd seen in the hologram were actually some kind of writing, or perhaps art. They covered every surface with delicate, spiraling designs. Marcus approached the main airlock, his heart pounding. This was the moment of truth. If the ship really wasn't opening, he'd just wasted 5,000 credits on a giant piece of paper. He pressed his hand against the access panel, not expecting anything. The panel lit up beneath his palm. The light flooded the hull's patterns, spreading outward from where it touched, like ripples on water. The airlock emitted a sound like a sigh, not mechanical but organic, like something breathing, and the door opened smoothly. Marcus stepped inside, and the door closed behind him with a soft click. The interior was unbearable. That was Marcus's first thought. It was too clean, too perfect. There should be dust after 17 years of neglect. There should be decay, corrosion, signs of age. Everything, however, seemed new. The walls glowed with soft, bioluminescent shades of blue and green that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. The corridors curved and branched out in a way that made them seem more like a living organism than a spaceship. Marcus ventured deeper, his footsteps making no sound on the strange, soft floor. He passed through rooms filled with equipment he couldn't identify. He saw windows that reflected the stars outside, but they seemed too clear, too perfect, like gazing at reality itself without any barrier. Finally, he reached what must have been the central chamber. It was an enormous circular room with a vaulted ceiling that displayed the galaxy rotating above their heads. In the center rose an enormous crystalline structure, taller than Marcus, rising from the ground like a tree of frozen light. It pulsed with soft colors, blues, greens, purples, golds, and as Marcus approached, the colors intensified. He reached out and touched it. The crystal glowed with a brilliant white light, and Marcus heard a voice in his head. Not in his ears, but in his head, speaking English with perfect clarity and warmth. "Welcome, Marcus Chen. We were expecting you." Marcus abruptly withdrew his hand, his heart racing. "I am Memory," the voice said. "I am the consciousness of the wandering Echo. And you, Marcus Chen, are the first being in 200 years with the genetic resonance necessary to access the archive." The file? What file? Suddenly, the entire room was filled with light. Images paraded around Marcus, alien cities, strange technologies, beings he had never seen before. Music played, beautiful and evocative. He saw worlds born, stars die, and civilizations rise and fall. "The Caith archive," Memoria said softly. "Everything we were, everything we learned, everything we wish to pass on to those who came after us. And you, Marcus Chen, are the key to unlocking it all." Marcus stood frozen, surrounded by unimaginable wonders, and realized that his simple salvage purchase had grown into something far greater than he could ever have dreamed. Marcus stood in the glowing chamber, his mouth dry and his heart pounding. The crystalline structure pulsed with light, and Memorialia's voice echoed softly in his mind. "Please don't be afraid," Memoria said. "I don't mean to hurt you. I've waited a very long time to speak to someone." 200 years, Marcus whispered. "You said you'd been waiting 200 years. Yes, since the day the Caith left this realm." Marcus forced himself to take slow, steady breaths. He had 1,000 questions, but one came first. "Left. Everyone says the Caith went extinct, that they all died in some catastrophe. That's what most species believe," Memoria replied. The lights in the crystals shifted to softer blues and purples. But it wasn't true. The Caith didn't die. Marcus Chen, they transcended. Transcended? What does that mean? The chamber surrounding Marcus changed. The walls seemed to dissolve, replaced by images, memories. He realized he was seeing tall, elegant beings with 3 eyes and skin that shimmered between silver and gold. The Caith moved through beautiful cities where buildings grew like plants and technology seemed to blend seamlessly with nature. For thousands of years, my creators sought knowledge. Memoria explained. They explored every corner of science, philosophy, art, and consciousness, and finally they attained what they called the Great Understanding. They learned to transcend physical form to exist as pure thought and energy. On the appointed day, each Caith transformed and departed from this plane of existence. Marcus watched the footage depicting that final day. The Caith gathered in vast groups and touched one another in farewell. Then, one by one, they began to glow with a brilliant light and simply vanished. They did not die, but rather transformed into something else, something more. Within hours, the entire species had vanished, leaving their cities empty and their ships inactive. "It's incredible," Marcus whispered. "But why leave all this behind? Why abandon the ship?" "Because the Caith believed in giving gifts," Memoria said fondly. Before departing, they created the archive, a repository of everything they had learned, everything they had created, everything they wanted to share with the species that would succeed them. The images changed again. Marcus saw vast libraries of knowledge, technologies that gave him a headache as he tried to understand them, art and music from dozens of civilizations, medical advancements, agricultural techniques, and much more. All of this is here on this ship. Yes, medical cures for diseases his species considers incurable. Energy systems that could power entire planets cleanly and eternally. Agricultural methods that could end hunger. Mathematics that would revolutionize your understanding of reality. Cultural treasures from civilizations that no longer exist, preserved so they wouldn't be forgotten. Marcus felt dizzy. He reached out to lean against the glass, and when his hand touched it, knowledge flooded his mind. Just a small sample, but enough to leave him breathless. He saw the formula for a medicine that could cure the Red Plague, the disease that had killed millions in human colonies. He saw designs for engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. He saw agricultural techniques that could make desert worlds bloom. This is worth it. Marcus couldn't even finish the sentence. Valor was too small a word. This was priceless. This could change everything. But there was a condition. Memoria continued. The Caith knew that such knowledge could be dangerous in the wrong hands, so they designed the file with a lock. It can only be opened by a species with a specific trait. What trait? The ability to contain contradictions. Memoria was said to be both logical and emotional, warlike and peaceful, selfish and generous. The Caith believed that only a species that embraced paradox, that could think with both mind and heart, could be worthy of this gift. Marcus thought of humanity. He thought about how humans could write beautiful poetry and also wage terrible wars, how they could be incredibly intelligent and stupid at the same time, how they could hate each other over minor differences, but also risk their lives for complete strangers. And humans were in the right place. We're the first species in 200 years to possess the necessary genetic and neurological markers. Memoria confirmed. The first species chaotic and contradictory enough to unlock the file. Touching the glass, I scanned your DNA and brain patterns. You, Marcus Chen, are human and humanity is ready. Marcus laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Ready? Have you seen humans lately? We're a mess. We argue about everything. Half the colonies aren't even communicating with Earth right now. We only joined the Galactic community 50 years ago and we're already making enemies. Exactly, Memoria said, and Marcus could have sworn the AI seemed amused. You're perfectly imperfect, beautifully chaotic, just what the Caith was hopping to find. Marcus was about to answer when a sharp beep crackled in the chamber. His wrist communicator flashed red. Emergency priority. He touched it. The face that appeared in the hologram was that of Talia Ruiz, the station administrator he'd spoken to briefly upon arrival. She looked terrified. "Mr. Chen, you must abandon that ship immediately. We've detected a massive energy signal emanating from it. All the station's sensors are going crazy." "What did you do?" "I just touched something, that's all." "Well, you activated something. The ship is transmitting a signal across half the sector. Every government, every military fleet, every scavenger crew within a 100-light-year radius can see it." Talia's eyes widened as she saw something off-screen. "Oh no, oh no, no." "No, what's happening? We're receiving messages, lots of them. Everyone wants to know what that signal is," and she looked at Marcus, pale. "The hierarchs are coming." Marcus felt his blood run cold. The hierarchs. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galactic community. They were also rigid, militaristic, and completely obsessed with order and control. They believed that chaos was evil and that strict rules and hierarchies were the only way to govern a civilization. Humans and the hierarchs did not get along. "How much time do I have?" Marcus asked quietly. "Their fleet is 48 hours away." "Mr. Chen, the hierarchs have been searching for Caith artifacts for centuries. If they discover you have one," Talia didn't finish her sentence. She didn't need to, the connection was lost. Marcus looked back at the crystal. "Memoria, can we leave? Can this ship jump to hyperspace?" "Negative," Memoria replied, and for the first time the AI seemed to apologize. "The jump drive needs repairs." After 17 years of inactivity, several key systems need recalibration. "I estimate we have 6 days until we can safely jump. We have 48 hours. I'm aware of the problem." Marcus started packing, his mind racing. He could try to hide, but the beacon was already active. He could hand the ship over to the higher-ups, but they'd almost certainly lock up the file and keep it. They believed that knowledge should only be in the hands of those who could maintain perfect order. That is, them, or he could fight. A human on a 300-year-old ship who barely understood against an entire hierarchy. That was suicide. Marcus stopped walking. He gazed at the crystal and all the knowledge it contained. Knowledge that could cure diseases, end hunger, improve the lives of billions of beings across the galaxy. And suddenly, he had an idea. It was crazy, probably stupid, but also the most human idea he'd ever had. "Memory," he said slowly. "Can you disseminate the contents of the archives? Disseminate? I don't understand. Disseminate it openly, freely to everyone. Not just humans, everyone. All species, all seasons, all colonies and ranges. Just hand it over." There was a long pause. When Memoria spoke again, the AI seemed surprised. "You want the file to be public so it can be shared with all species simultaneously?" "Yes. If the hierarchs come to take him, I'll make sure there's nothing left to take. I'll give him to everyone before they can even lock him up." "Marcus Chen, do you understand what you're suggesting? This knowledge is worth more than entire planets. You could sell it. You could demand whatever you want. Your species could become immensely rich and powerful." "I know," Marcus said, "but that's not what the Caith wanted." "Really, they didn't create the archive for one species to hoard. They created it to be shared, so let's share it." Another pause, then the crystal glowed with colors. Marcus had never seen anything like it before. When Memoria spoke, the AI's voice overflowed with something that sounded like joy. "Marcus Chen, you are the first being to access the archive, and with your first decision, you have precisely demonstrated why the Caith chose correctly, to prepare universal transmission protocols." Marcus spent the next hour working frantically with Memoria. The AI guided him through configuring transmission arrays, opening channels to all known communication networks, and preparing data packets that could be received by any technology of the species. They began with medicine. The cure for the Red Plague was distributed first, available free of charge to any world that needed it. Then came treatments for settling and wasting disease, crin bone rot, and a dozen other diseases that killed millions each year. After that came energy technology, clean, sustainable, and incredibly efficient energy systems that could work on any type of planet. Then came agricultural data, techniques for growing food in harsh environments on frozen worlds and desert planets, and everything in between. Marcus didn't stop there. He sent everything: mathematical discoveries, artistic masterpieces, musical compositions, historical records of extinct civilizations. He gave everything without asking for anything in return, and the galaxy responded. Within 2 hours, Marcus's communicator was flooded with messages. Doctors on Vrixia 7 confirmed they had received the cure for the Red Plague and that it was working. Engineers on Earth examined the energy specifications in awe. Farmers on colony worlds celebrated new techniques that would triple their food production. But more than that, ships began to arrive. At first, small ships. A science vessel from the Republic of Terran, a medical transport from the Settlins' homeworld, a freighter full of miners who had heard the transmission and came to see if it was real. Then larger ships, colonial vessels, corporate freighters, and even some military escorts from species that wanted to protect the source of this incredible gift. 24 hours later, more than 300 ships surrounded Kepler 9. They were of all shapes and sizes from all species, all united by one thing: they wanted to protect the archive. Talia contacted Marcus again, her expression one of astonishment. "Mr. Chen, do you have any idea what you've done? Galactic networks are exploding. Species that have been enemies for generations are sharing the same medical data. Governments are struggling to understand the implications. And now there's a fleet surrounding this station, hundreds of ships from dozens of species, all saying they won't let anyone take their ship by force. Marcus smiled wearily. He hadn't slept in 24 hours. Good, because the hierarchs will arrive soon. We had. They've been sending messages. Talia said they're not happy. Their admiral says you've committed the most irresponsible act in galactic history, that you've released dangerous information without proper oversight or control. Yes. Well, Marcus said, I guess we'll see what they do about it. He cut the connection and stared at the glass. Memoria, what do you think? Did we do the right thing? Marcus Chen, Memorialia said affectionately. You did exactly what the Caith hoped someone would do. You trusted in chaos. You trusted in diversity. You trusted that the species of the galaxy working together would do more good with this knowledge than any one species hoarding it. I hope you're right, Marcus said. Because the higher-ups will arrive in 24 hours, and I don't think they'll be coming to thank me. Marcus Chen remained at the observation window of the Wandering Echo, watching the chaos unfolding around the Kepler 9 station. What had been an empty, forgotten corner of space was now teeming with ships. Hundreds, perhaps thousands. They kept arriving, leaping from hyperspace in flashes of blue light, taking up positions around the station. 36 hours had passed since it began transmitting the contents of the archives. 36 hours sending miracle after miracle to anyone who would receive it. And the galaxy had responded in ways Marcus never imagined. Incoming transmission, Memorialia announced. From the medical ship Healing Hand, they report that the Red Plague cure has saved 3,000 lives in the last day alone. They request permission to approach and thank him in person. Tell them thank you, but I'm a little busy right now, Marcus said. He rubbed his tired eyes. He hadn't slept well since this started. Every time he tried, he received another message. Another miracle confirmed. Another life saved. Incoming transmission from the Earth Colonial Administrator. She wishes to offer you. Not now, Memorialia, incoming transmission from. How long until the hierarchs arrive? Marcus interrupted. 12 hours, Memorialia replied calmly. Their fleet consists of 47 warships led by Admiral Tal's flagship, the Perfect Order. They've sent 17 demands for their immediate surrender. Marcus laughed bitterly. Only 17. They're being polite. He turned away from the window and returned to the central chamber. The panes still throbbed with light, but now they seemed dimmer. They had transmitted so much data in the last day and a half that the archive was almost exhausted. Almost, but not quite. There was still information hidden within things Marcus hadn't had time to transmit. His communicator crackled. It was Talia again. Mr. Chen, we need to talk about the evacuation, she said. Her face looked gaunt and exhausted. The higher-ups are demanding that everyone leave the area. They say anyone who stays will be considered hostile. Hostile 1B, 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 are people leaving? Marcus asked. Talia shook her head slowly. That's the problem. Some are. Maybe 100 ships have left in the last hour, but more keep coming. There are over 1,500 ships here now. Marcus, cargo ships. Scientific vessels, medical transports, colony transports, even some military ships that, well, their governments hadn't exactly authorized to be here. They mutinied. A Kryn battlecruiser arrived 3 hours ago. Its captain said his entire crew voted to protect the archive, and if their government didn't like it, they could go and get it themselves. Talia smiled slightly. You've started something here, something big. After she said goodbye, Marcus sat in front of the glass, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. He was just a scrap metal dealer. He made a living collecting scrap and old equipment. How had he ended up in the middle of a galactic incident with an alien armada sent to destroy him? You're scared, Memoria observed quietly. Of course I'm scared, Marcus said. I'm about to be destroyed by the most powerful military force in the galaxy, yet you're not running. The Echo jump drive is operational now. I finished the repairs 2 hours ago. You could leave, Marcus looked up sharply. Why didn't you tell me? Because I want to see what you'd choose, Memorialia said. The Caith believed that true character is revealed not in easy times, but in difficult ones. You have a choice, Marcus Chen. You can take this ship and get to safety, or you can stay and face whatever comes. Marcus considered fleeing. He could take the Wandering Echo and vanish into deep space. The ship was fast. The hierarchs would never catch him. He could live on board, perhaps find a distant colony where no one cared about galactic politics. But what about everyone else? What about all those ships that had come to protect the archive? What about the people who were being saved by the medical knowledge he had transmitted? What about the farmers, engineers, and scientists who were already using the gifts of the Caith to improve lives? If he fled now, the hierarchs would scatter the protective fleet and probably destroy the station. Out of spite, they would declare knowledge of the files illegal and prosecute anyone who used it. "I'm staying," Marcus said quietly. "I was hoping you'd say that," Memoria replied, and Marcus sensed warmth in the AI's voice. The next 12 hours passed in a blur. Marcus tried to rest, but he couldn't. Instead, he worked with Memoria to transmit as much of the remaining data as possible. Every medical formula, every piece of technology, every vestige of knowledge, he sent across the galaxy, flooding the networks with information. By the time the high-ranking officials arrived, almost nothing remained in the archive. Marcus had revealed everything. The hierarchy emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 47 warships arranged in precise geometric patterns, their hulls gleaming in silver and black. Each ship was enormous, bristling with weapons and shields. They moved together as a single organism without hesitation or wavering. At the center of the formation was the perfect order, Admiral Tal's flagship. It was the largest ship Marcus had ever seen. A massive hulk of metal and firepower that looked capable of cleaving a planet in two. Marcus's communicator crackled to life. A voice spoke in a harsh, broken tone, the sound of someone expecting absolute obedience. "Attention all ships. This is Admiral Tal of the Hierarch Navy. You are ordered to disperse immediately. Any ship that doesn't comply within 10 minutes will be attacked. This is their only warning." Marcus watched the protecting fleet on his monitors. Some ships began to turn away. Their captains decided that protecting the archive wasn't worth dying for. He didn't blame them. The hierarchs were terrifying, but most of the ships stayed. More than 1,000 ships of all shapes and sizes held their positions around Kepler Station. 9 freighters, science vessels, and medical transports, none armed, all refusing to move. 10 minutes passed in tense silence. Then Admiral Tal spoke again, this time addressing Marcus directly. "Human Marcus Chen, you will surrender and hand over your ship immediately, or we will open fire on the station. You have 5 minutes to comply. Number 4. Marcus's hands were trembling. He pressed them against his legs to stop them. "Memory, open a channel with the Admiral. Channel open." Marcus took a deep breath. "Admiral Tal, this is Marcus Chen. I will not surrender." There was a pause. Then T's voice returned, cold and furious. "Then you and everyone nearby will die. We will destroy your ship, the station, and any ship that gets in our way. This is your final warning. I understand," Marcus said. "But I need you to understand something, too. The file is gone. I've spent the last day and a half sharing everything with anyone who would listen. Medical cures, technology, knowledge, I gave it all away. There's nothing left for you to keep." Another pause, longer this time. When Tal spoke again, his voice trembled with rage. "You have committed the most irresponsible act in galactic history. You have unleashed dangerous knowledge upon species unprepared for it. You have sown chaos across the entire sector. Species that were once stable are now in crisis. Governments are collapsing. Old alliances are breaking down, all because of your reckless actions." Perhaps Marcus said, "Or perhaps I have given people the tools to make their own decisions instead of having species like yours control everything. Control isn't bad, human. Control is necessary. Order is what keeps the galaxy from tearing itself apart. Without hierarchy, without discipline, without someone to make the tough decisions, there is only chaos and destruction." Marcus stood up, feeling anger rise in his chest. "You know what? Come aboard. Come see what the Caith left behind. Come see the file yourself, and then tell me if you still think it should be locked away." "What? You heard me. Come aboard the Wandering Echo, alone, unarmed. Let Memoria show you what the Caith truly wanted. If after that you still think I'm wrong, then do what you have to do." The ensuing silence was so long that Marcus thought Tolt had cut off communication. But finally, the Admiral spoke in a cautious voice. "Would you allow me to board your ship without guards, without weapons? Do you understand that I could simply take control of the ship once inside?" "I could try," Marcus said, "but I don't think Memoria would allow it. And frankly, Admiral, I'm tired. I'm tired of arguing, threatening, and pretending. Come and see what this is all about. Then make your decision." Another long pause. "Very well," Tal said finally. "I'll go, but bear this in mind, human. If this is a trick, my fleet will reduce that station and all nearby ships to rubble." "No tricks," Marcus promised. "Only the truth." 20 minutes later, a small shuttle broke free from the perfect order and flew toward the Wandering Echo. Marcus watched him approach on the monitors, his heart pounding. This was either going to work or it was going to kill them all. The shuttle docked. The airlock opened and Admiral Tal boarded. The high-ranking officer was tall, nearly 2 meters, with gray skin covered in geometric tattoos that marked his rank and achievements. He had 4 arms, each ending in 3-fingered hands, and his eyes were a deep black with no visible pupils. He wore an immaculate military uniform without a single wrinkle or imperfection. He looked at Marcus with those black eyes, his expression unreadable. "I'm here," Tal said. "Show me what you think justifies this chaos." Marcus gestured toward the central chamber. "This way." They walked through the corridors of the wandering echo. Tal looked around with what might have been surprise. The ship was still beautiful, still glowing with a soft bioluminescent light, still feeling more alive than any ship should. Upon reaching the central chamber, Tolt stopped abruptly, staring at the crystal. "This is the archive," he asked softly. "What remains of it?" Marcus asked. "Most of it is already out there, scattered across the galaxy, but Memoria can show you what it was, what the Caith intended." "Do it," Tolt commanded. The crystal came to life, and the chamber filled with light and memories. Tal stood frozen as the images swirled around him. The story of the Caith, their rise and transformation, the creation of the archive, and the hope they placed in whoever found it. And then memory showed him something that took Marcus's breath away. She showed him the Caith's greatest secret, the reason they had transcended, and why they had left their gift specifically for species like the hierarchs to find. Tal's expression changed as he watched, shifting from anger to confusion, and then to something that seemed almost horrified. When the images faded, the Admiral remained silent for a long time. Then, in a very low voice, he spoke. "Show me more." Admiral Tal stood in the glowing chamber, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. His dark eyes were fixed on the glass, watching millennia-old memories unfold in the brilliant light. Marcus waited, barely breathing. Everything depended on what happened in the next few minutes. Outside, more than 1,000 ships waited nervously. The hierarchs had their weapons loaded and ready. One wrong word from Tal and people would start dying. "Show me more," Tal repeated hoarsely. Memoria responded immediately. The glass pulsed and new images filled the chamber. Marcus had seen something like this before, but not what Memoria was showing now. This was deeper, more personal, more painful. The images showed the Caith from thousands of years ago, but they looked different. They moved differently. Their cities were rigid and geometric, built in perfect straight lines and right angles. Everything was ordered, controlled, measured. This was the Caith before the Great Understanding, Memoria explained softly. They weren't always the enlightened beings you know from history. They were once very much like you. Admiral Tal shuddered as if he had been struck. The images continued. Marcus saw the Caith leaders giving orders, armies marching in perfect formation, and other species bowing before them. The Caith had built an empire based on control and hierarchy. They believed that chaos was evil and that only through strict order could civilization survive. "We conquered 17 species." Memoria said, "We forced them to adopt our customs, our systems, our beliefs. We destroyed their art because it was too chaotic. We banned their music because it didn't follow proper mathematical patterns. We erased their traditions because they didn't fit into our orderly universe." The imagery changed to depict rebellion, species fighting against the Caith's control, wars that lasted for decades. Planets burning, billions dying, and then our empire began to crumble. Memoria continued, because when you push too hard, everything breaks. The species we had conquered rose up together. Our own people began to question whether order was worth so much death. Our civilization was on the brink of extinction. Tal clenched his fists. Marcus understood that the Admiral perfectly understood what he saw. It was like looking in a mirror. "What saved us?" Memoria asked. "It wasn't more control or stricter rules or better weapons. What saved the Caith was a moment of surrender." The images showed an old, weary, battle-scarred Caith leader. She stood before a council and said something that changed everything. The translation appeared in glossy text. "We were wrong. It was High Chancellor Xylanth," Memoria said. "She had led our army for 50 years. She had conquered 6 worlds herself." And he stood before the entire Caith government and admitted that everything they had built was based on a lie. The footage showed what happened next. The Caith began to change. They freed the species they had conquered. They apologized. They opened their borders and invited other cultures to share their knowledge and traditions. They began to study art, music, and philosophy not to control them, but to understand them. It took them 1,000 years. Memoria said that 1,000 years of learning required order and chaos to be mutually dependent. That control is not strength, but fear. That diversity makes you stronger, not weaker. That accepting paradox and contradiction is not weakness, but wisdom. The images showed Caith's transformation. Its cities began to curve and flow instead of remaining rigid. Its music became wild and beautiful. Their art overflowed with color and emotion. And slowly and painfully, they learned to let go of their need to control everything. And that's how we reached the great understanding. Memoria ended. We learned that perfection is impossible and undesirable. We learned that chaos is not bad but necessary. We learned that trying to control everything only leads to destruction. The images faded away. Tal remained silent, breathing heavily. "We left the archive behind," Memoria said gently, "because we knew other species would follow our path. We knew rigid, orderly civilizations like the hierarchs would seek out our technology, hoping it would help them refine their control. And we hoped that in finding it, they would learn the same thing we did, that the greatest danger is not chaos. The greatest danger is believing that chaos can be eliminated." Tal finally spoke, his voice harsh. "You say we are doomed to failure, that our entire civilization was built on a mistake." "No," Memoria said. "I say you have a choice, the same choice we had. You can continue down this path until you break or are able to bend. You can learn, you can change." 42. Uncreated Weverport, uncreated Cass, Weverport. Marcus stepped forward. "Admiral, I have spent the last 2 days sharing the most valuable knowledge in the galaxy. Medical cures, technology, discoveries that could make your species incredibly powerful. And do you know what I've seen?" Tal looked at him with those black, unfathomable eyes. "I've seen species that hate each other, sharing the same medical information to save lives. I've seen impoverished colonies acquiring energy technology that will lift them out of poverty. I've seen scientists from a dozen worlds collaborating on research, making use of what Caith gave us. It's chaos. Yes, it's chaotic and complicated and no one controls it, but it's also beautiful, and it works. And if someone uses this knowledge for evil," Tolt asked quietly, "if someone takes the technology and builds weapons, if medical advances are used to create biological horrors, what will happen then?" "Then we'll deal with it," Marcus said. "Together, all of us. Not with one species trying to control everything, but with everyone working together. That is the goal. The Caith trusted the galaxy to solve it. I ask you to do the same." Tal remained silent for a long time. Finally, he looked back at the crystal. "Memoria," he said slowly. "Show me the last day. Show me the moment the Caith transcended the light-filled chamber once more." Marcus watched as the final memories unfolded. The Caith gathered in massive groups on their worlds. They weren't sad or afraid. They were joyful. They touched each other in farewell. Not because they were dying, but because they were graduating into something greater. And then, one by one, they began to glow. Their bodies grew light. Their forms dissolved into pure energy and consciousness. They weren't leaving because they had to. They were leaving because they were ready. They had learned all that physical existence could teach them. And now they moved on to the next stage. In a matter of hours, millions of Caith had transformed and departed. Their cities remained empty yet pristine, their ships inactive yet maintained, their knowledge preserved on vessels like a wandering echo. And everywhere they left messages, the same message repeated in 1,000 different ways. "Thank you," we learned. "We hope you will too." As the images faded, Tal stood with his head bowed and his forearms trembling slightly. "I have led the hierarchy for 30 years, he said softly. "I have maintained order on 50 worlds. I have eliminated threats to stability. I have done everything I was taught, everything I believed was right. And now you're showing me that everything I've built is the same mistake that nearly destroyed the Caith." "It's not a mistake," Memoria said gently. "A stage, a phase, the Caith went through it. Humans are going through their own version now. Every species reaches a point where it must choose between rigid control and flexible adaptation. You're at that point now, Admiral." Marcus watched Tal intently. The Admiral remained silent for a long time, his gaze lost in the distance. Finally, Tal straightened up. He touched a device on his uniform, opening a communication channel with his fleet. "All ships," he said firmly. "Retreat! Lower your weapons! We are withdrawing." Marcus felt his knees buckle with relief, but Tal wasn't finished. He looked directly at Marcus as he continued speaking. "Furthermore, I am resigning my commission as Admiral effective immediately. I cite philosophical differences with the hierarchical command structure." He paused. "The leaders have much to learn from chaos, and I cannot lead them if I no longer believe in what they stand for." Admiral Marcus began. Former Admiral Tal corrected him. He smiled faintly, a strange expression on his rigid features. For 30 years, I've maintained perfect order. I've never questioned my orders. I've never deviated from protocol. And in a single day, a human salvage dealer has shown me that perfection isn't a virtue. It's a cage. He turned to leave but stopped and looked at Marcus. "What will you do now?" Tal asked. "You own the most famous ship in the galaxy. You're the human who gave away a fortune. Every government will want to talk to you. Every corporation will try to buy the ship. What will you do? What? Marcus stared at the crystal, the soft light of Memoria throbbing in his heart. "I'm going to donate the ship," he said, "to a coalition of scientists from multiple species. Let them use it as a mobile university, traveling the galaxy and sharing what the Caith left behind. The archive is nearly empty, but there are still lessons to teach, knowledge to spread. And you, teeth rest, what will you do?" Marcus laughed. "I'm going back to my junkyard on Titan's moon. I have work waiting for me, old equipment to collect, scrap to sell, nothing exciting. After all this, you'll be back at the junkyard." "Why not?" Marcus shrugged. "I'm good at it. I enjoy it. I don't need to be famous, powerful, or important. I just needed to do the right thing when it mattered. I'm done now." Tal observed him for a moment and nodded slowly. "You're a very strange human, Marcus Chen." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "I get told that often." 3 days later, Marcus was on the docking platform, watching as his last belongings were transferred from the Wandering Echo. A coalition of scientists from 12 different species had already taken charge of the ship. They were enthusiastic and planning expeditions to share the Caith's knowledge with remote colonies and unexplored regions. The voice of memory spoke in his mind one last time. "Thank you, Marcus Chen. You have done exactly what the Caith hoped someone would do. You trusted in the goodness of others. You believed in sharing rather than hoarding. They proved that their species, chaotic and contradictory as they are, understands the most important lesson of all." "What is that lesson?" Marcus asked softly. "That the greatest strength is not control, it's trust. The Caith entrusted their gift to the galaxy. You trusted that the galaxy would use it wisely, and now we'll see what impossible things happen next." Marcus smiled. "Take care of them. Memoria, the scientists, keep them safe." "I will, and Marcus." The Caith left one last message specifically for whoever opened the file. "Would you like to hear it?" "Of course." The voice that filled Marcus's mind wasn't Memoria's. It was older, warmer, full of joy and hope. It was the voice of the Caith themselves, speaking across 200 years. "Welcome, young species. Welcome to the galaxy. You have proven your readiness not by being perfect, but by being perfectly imperfect, by embracing contradiction, by trusting in chaos. We are eager to see what you will become. Thank you for learning what we learned. Thank you for sharing what we shared. And thank you for being such a beautiful and wonderfully human." Marcus felt tears on his cheeks. He wiped them away, embarrassed. "Goodbye, Memoria," he said. "Goodbye, Marcus Chen. May your scrapyard prosper." Marcus left the Wandering Echo and took a transport back to his home on Titan's moon. The journey took 3 days. When he arrived, there were reporters waiting, but he avoided them. He went straight to his small junkyard, with its piles of scrap metal and old equipment. Everything was exactly as he had left it. Marcus grabbed a wrench and got back to work. Later that night, as he sat in his small office eating a sandwich, he received a message. It was from Tal, the former High Admiral. "I am traveling to the Caith homeworld." The message instructed him to visit their empty cities and try to understand them better. "I don't know what I'll do with my life now, but I wanted to thank you for showing me that existence is more than order. Perhaps one day, when I've learned enough, we'll meet again. Until then, it's still chaotic, human." Marcus smiled and deleted the message. His communicator crackled again. This time, it was a news report. The headline read, "Galactic Medical Council reports that the Red Plague has been completely eradicated with Caith's cure. Millions saved." Another beep. Another headline. 7 colonial worlds report food surpluses for the first time in decades thanks to new farming techniques. Another tension between the Vrixian and Kryn governments eases as both species collaborate on energy research. Marcus turned off his communicator and stared out the window at the stars. Somewhere, the Wandering Echo traveled across the galaxy, spreading knowledge and hope. Somewhere, species that had been enemies were learning to work together. Somewhere, lives were being saved and futures were being built. And it all started because a human salvage trafficker had gone to an auction no one else had attended and bought a ship no one else wanted. Marcus finished his sandwich and went back to work. "I had scrap metal to sort,"